Perfect. Okay, yeah, so like we said there, I am the prevention officer for the province. I'm out of Shuby, also the FireSmart liaison for the province. I guess just a quick show of hands here, who's heard of FireSmart before? Nice. There's some groups that I talked to that maybe one hand threw up and that was it. So it is a very, you know, it's a very established program. It's been around for a while, especially out in Western Canada, but the big thing about FireSmart is just because it's a program that tells us what we can and can't do, it's more of a different frame of mind or thought on how we can protect not just our houses, but our standing timber, just the general ecosystem that we can try to protect. So, kind of what I said here, so this is FireSmart, this is kind of the basis of it. It was developed in 1993 out in Alberta. You can imagine Western Canada is way more of a fire load area than what Eastern Canada is, so they've been through it, they've learned through, we'll say, trial and error, that a lot of this stuff, if you can implement it in communities, this stuff will definitely help to protect people's houses. So, each province and territory, they do have a version of FireSmart. You can think of Western Canada, so Alberta, BC is kind of the gold standard. They've gone way above what FireSmart kind of standard is for the rest of the country. They're very involved with it. A lot of their communities are, you know, the municipalities are very involved with helping with it instead of just a provincial government. So administering the program is different in each province too. So for here, I'm the liaison for the province and pretty much the only one that deals with FireSmart on a daily basis. We do have some technicians in the districts that do help with FireSmart, kind of helping with education stuff and any prescriptions that we do. So this is FireSmart in a nutshell. If you haven't heard of it before, it is based around a house, based around your yard, we'll say. So the house, yard, out to 30 meters is what FireSmart was built on. But we can use this premise in any kind of setting. Like if we're talking about a woodlot, something other than your house, these principles will still work. And again, I spoke a lot about Western Canada, so this is a map of the urban interface. So the WUI, Wildland Urban Interface, you know, we hear a lot about what happens in Western Canada about all the urban interface fires that they see. But if you look at Eastern Canada, especially in the Maritimes, we are way more in the chance of having a WUI fire in Nova Scotia and Eastern Canada is way more than it is in the rest of the country. Probably something that we didn't really think of much until, we'll say, 2016, 2017, Porter's Lake, 2023, the Barrington fire. You know, structures were lost in any one of those fires. But, you know, we can think of Nova Scotia, kind of the points that I have up there, 70% is private. Small communities, standalone, there's a lot of, we're spread out, very small landmass, but spread out, so the chances of a fire starting close to a community or any kind of houses is greatly improved. Of course, scale and the size, and the wildland timber type and composition. Scott mentioned earlier there, you know, very diverse province with how our timber is, you know, different stands, ecosystems are different in the western part of the province compared to central, compared to Cape Breton. All that stuff definitely has a how fire reacts within it. So again, this is more about the WUI side of stuff. So these are kind of some considerations as to why WUI is such a big issue for us. So the human intervention has altered the natural fire regime by suppressing fires. Fire is natural. It's a good thing. You know, it's kind of hard to talk about when we lose houses on fire that happen during wildfires, but fire is natural. There's species in this province that are fire origin species that only propagate after fire. So, you know, it's something to think of it in a different kind of lens than just fire is bad. I hope I'm speaking to the right crowd here. No one's going to throw stuff at me when I say fire is good, but you know, it's one of these things that it's been around forever. It is a cleansing tool. It is used in other parts of the country and in the world to as a tool for not just fighting fire, but clearing land, hazard reduction stuff, so that the communities are more mitigated for fire. So what we're seeing now with that change in the fire regime is we're having less intense, instead of having more or less intense fires, we're seeing more intense fires. So in the past, if you think of the fire regime that could be spanned over 1,000 years, what they used to have is a lot of small fires that would just take out surface fuels. It wouldn't really get up in the crowns, and they'd get to be a very big fire. Now we're seeing that because we're actually suppressing all the fires, our fuel load is getting higher. So the fires that we do see that get a chance to actually get up and go, they're way more intense. And they burn for longer, they burn deeper, hotter, and of course, now we have communities that are in the way. And again, so communities have expanded into the surrounding natural area, exposing structures to wildland fuels. Everyone wants to go live in the woods, right? It's very nice to be out away from everybody else, nothing surrounded by trees, but you know, as we get out there, if we're nice and tucked in, we got trees over top of the houses, over top of our sheds, the chances of a fire affecting your residence is way more. And again, we talked about Fiona. You've seen a lot of the stuff that Scott had up there and the damage that Fiona did. Dorian, Juan, all those things that happen within the province that affect our standing timber, they are now a big concern for fire. It's not now just standing trees. We got trees laid over each other. We got a lot of surface fuels, so the fuels are way more available for fire after these incidents happen. Of course, we see winter storms with ice, all that kind of stuff. Floods, it's hard to believe that floods would be a contributor to wildfire, but as the water pushes in and as it recedes, it just leaves all of that debris sitting there, right? So now we have piles of debris everywhere, potentially close to houses, potentially, flood after flood after flood. It just builds and builds, and then now if something does have a chance to catch fire in there, it's going to be a pretty bad one. So these are some tools that we can use for wildfire in the province. Bridgewater is the left-hand picture, and we got some woodlots that are close by there. This map over here is an exposure map that was built by our GIS folks in Shuby. It basically gives a exposure rating on structures, woodlots. So you can just imagine with the coloration, anything that's of the dark burgundies and the reds is a very high hazard. And then as you get in closer into town, we're getting into more urban-related fuels, so there's a lot less. But look at the fringes around the town of Bridgewater. There's potential for fires to start out there, and the woodlots are definitely part of that transition ecosystem between the towns and the natural forest. So the woodlots can definitely, assist with protection of communities. And this is what we're trying to kind of this is the premise of how a fire will start. So what we're looking to do is these principles that we do for vegetation management is to remove surface and ladder fuels to stop that fire from starting on the ground, getting up into the canopies, and then taking off on us. So as you see the progression here, as the fire starts to build intensity, it wants to go up, it climbs the ladder fuels into the crowns. Once it's in the crowns, it's no longer really accessible by our crews. It now has to be the heavy equipment, the aircraft and stuff that actually has to action this thing because it's just too dangerous for ground crews. And I think it's in one of those slides after this, but one of the biggest issues for losing houses in any wildfire are ember transport. So, we think of a fire rolling into a community, we think of the fire actually hitting the houses and burning them. That's not the case. It's usually embers that are thrown up to 2 kilometers from a very intense wildfire, landing in people's mulched gardens, their gutters on the roof, and those are what 99% of the houses that are lost in wildfires is because of ember transport, not because of actual contact with fire. So if we can keep them out of the crowns, we can keep it on a kind of a surface layer or something that 6 foot, 8 foot flame lengths, then that will allow our crews to get in there, action it, and not be able to throw those embers long distances. A little bit dark pictures, but this is kind of prescriptions, non-prescriptions. You think of a managed forest where Scott talked about the commercial thinning, he talked about the site prep, all that kind of stuff. It does make a difference in these stands. So you think of an area that is managed. And these are pictures after a fire, very little damage. It was just surface fire, it rolled through the ground, and that was pretty much it. 10? Okay. So then you think of like our kind of natural forest. very thick, very dense, a lot of different species in it. Unmanaged, now you see the aftermath of that. It's a different, completely different story. Crowns are burnt out. You see the differences. So you spoke about soils, and now we see a wildfire where if it's a nice low intensity burn, it's going to take out a lot of the vegetation on the ground, but it's not going to burn deep. You get a very intense fire, it's not just going to take out all your timber, but it's going to burn down deep, it's going to take all your organics, it's going to take everything right to mineral soil. So the chance for a fire causing damage because of high fuel load is probably one of the worst things that we have in the province for right now, especially after hurricanes and we'll say limited forest management. So this might be a little bit contradictory to some of the forest management practices that are put into place, but this is a general FireSmart treatment. So remove dead and down, basically get whatever you can off of the ground so it doesn't have that fine fuel to start. You're going to limb the trees up 2 meters so that they have a clean bowl so they can't get into those ladder fuels. Try to get a 3-meter crown spacing, so not just when you look up, you're also going to see space between the crowns. It's not just going to be, canopy intermixed with each other. Give it a chance to get up. A small scale stuff like people's yards, smaller woodlots, it can be done by hand, chainsaw, whatever you have. It doesn't need to get to the big heavy equipment. But then there's also larger treatments where you're now going to use, mulchers, harvesters, and that kind of stuff just to thin the areas out. But it's just the differences that you could see, if we've seen a fire roll through the top picture, the chance for it to get up in the canopies and become an intense fire is way more than what it is on the bottom picture because you don't have that transition period between the surface and the crowns. So this is kind of what I talked about. I mean, we look at, this is kind of it's a fire progression. It includes prescribed fire plus thinning. And this other picture is, I think it's a basic prescription for silviculture work that's done. It's fairly similar. It's just removing the surface layer or removing the fine fuels that are on the ground that we would use to, replenish the soils is one thing that just doesn't really work with woodlot management and wildfire, if that makes sense. But we can always do some kind of a, massage the two of them together so that it may not be a complete removal of all the surface materials. Maybe they stay, but it's limbed up and some openings, some commercial thinning. There's definitely combinations that would work. So I guess we'll just get right down to the woodlot side of it. If you're active in the woodlot, remove the dead vegetation. Disease insects, that's always something that people want to do, is get rid of the disease and insects that are in a woodlot. Ladder fuels, do some trimming of the bottom branches just to get that fuel off the tree so that it can't get up. Thin, any kind of commercial thinning or any kind of thinning you can do to separate the standing trees is always a good thing. Fire-resistant species. In the woodlot, there's really, most woodlots are for merchantable purposes, right? You're going to plant conifer to repropagate to get back to market again. Hardwoods, I know Scott talked about hardwoods too. Hardwoods are, probably one of the biggest fire breaks that we can have in this province. Naturally, we're in a Acadian forest, so it used to be a lot of hardwoods in it. Picture left there is Long Lake. That picture was taken in late September, but all those green patches are just pure hardwood stands. So you can see the fire burnt around took all the conifer, took all the mixed wood out. Any of the big hardwood stands, they just didn't burn because there was nothing for it to get up into those leafy canopies to actually burn. And I think it's Cape Breton, but that's typical Acadian forest. Very, very fire resilient forest compared to our pure conifer stands. That's it. How did I do? I'm ahead of time. Right.